Jeff, good morning. How are you?
Doing very well.
The game was simultaneously beautiful and ugly this week. Always beautiful when you win, but there weren't, some aspects of it that weren't as aesthetically pleasing, but we're happy about the final score. So let's start where we typically do with Trevor Lawrence and another bevy of drops among his pass catchers or potential pass catchers this week. But in general, what did you see from film on Trevor?
Okay. He's got to be more accurate, I think, overall. And obviously his guys got to help him out a little bit. But there was still some plays that he made in that ball game that were just, really good. Like the moment, the big play to BTJ, that's a can play where you start out with a run and then he changes the play, but then he also checks the protection perfectly because every guy that was coming on this cover zero blitz, which a lot of people say, well, what is a cover zero blitz? Cover zero blitz is when the defense sends everybody after the quarterback and they're having one person cover one wide receiver across the board. So there's no safety sitting back deep playing center field or anything. So if you get a guy free, it can be a big, big play like it was for Brian Thomas Jr., but you got to get the protection set right, and he set it beautifully. Everything was picked up great. ETN makes the nice block on the outside. Everybody's got, man for a man, and it's a big play.
Yeah, it was, and it was a big play for Brian Thomas at that point as well.
And I think that the tone of the game and really the message that I got from that game was this team is different. I think in years past, this might have been a game where you would say, as a team would be like, oh, here we go again. And I think as fans, we're kind of trained into that mindset a little bit. And I give this team credit, because there were so many different moments of individuals in the team being resilient. You think of Brian Thomas Jr. He had 3 drops in the ball game, lost his swagger a little bit, and then he makes arguably the biggest offensive play in the game. And Tyson Campbell gets smoked on a double move. Comes back, the last defensive stand that they have, he has a huge pass breakup on Nico Collins, and then he causes the fumble on Nico Collins. So those are the things that I think make you feel really good about where this football team is at from a psychological standpoint.
It was very similar, Tony, we were talking about yesterday to last year in the opener, right? Mm-hmm. When you had the fumble, this time you had Trevor Lawrence throwing an interception. Very next play, you get hit over the top for a big touchdown. And last year you were still winning. This year it tied it up. But, it could have, if this team wasn't mentally tough enough, could have killed them right there.
If the team from last year were playing in that game,
oh goodness,
on the interception and then the big play, it would have been over. It would have been a runaway Texans win.
It became, we do our keys to victory every Friday on the show, and we got to a point where somebody that was doing a key to victory at some point, once it became clear that that's who that football team was, the key was when the situation comes up in this game, can they overcome it one time? Like, can they overcome it one time?
And how many times?
Right. Like, after the way things went against the Bengals, and they play a game where they had 5 or 6 different ways to win it, the Bengals had one, everything worked out that way, for the Bengals that week. It's how are they going to deal with that? Because we saw how teams in the last year and a half have dealt with that here in Jacksonville. And there's a lot of the same guys on the field. You mentioned Tyson Campbell wasn't off the field for all that stuff that was going on last year, right? He was a part of that kind of thing. And to watch him bounce back specifically, like Brian Thomas Jr., I think we're still waiting on him to really come out of the weeds, whatever's going on with these drops with him. But hopefully, there's at least the hope that big play can get him back on track with what's going on, but I don't think there's any way.
Yeah, you hope it's a launching point, for Brian. But also another resilient point that I would bring up is that in the first half you were getting stuffed. I mean, Texans were playing really good run defense, but to be able to stick with the play calling and to stay with the runs, and then eventually to find the runs that are working for you, I think that's a great example of good coaching. Another example of great coaching is at the end of the game when all of a sudden the Texans let you go in and score. And Liam, they'd already thought about that whole thing in the broadcast. I was saying, is that the right thing? I don't know, because now you're going to maybe give the Texans too much time. Mm-hmm. And, Liam, in his press conference yesterday, I loved listening to him talking through it because he literally walked us through the whole thought process. Yeah. And they knew what the scenario was, and they talked about it. And that's to be able to have kind of that whole mechanism in place to be able to be prepared for that moment. And then when it happens, to be able to deal with it in the proper fashion, I thought was really good. As he explained yesterday in his press conference, I think he said it would have been about 55 seconds. It might have been less than that, and it might have been even less than that if you gain a first down and then you go in and score or whatever, depending on how many first downs you could get there. But it's good to see a young coach kind of go through that. I think the only mistake that he made in that ball game was when he used the timeout and then he decided to kick the field goal.
Yeah.
You kind of ice your own kicker there.
Yeah, I thought like in that moment when they called the timeout, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I wonder if they go for it coming out of the timeout just because of the weirdness, right, of the situation. Now they wind up kicking it, he misses. Everything happens the way that it happens. But it is nice to have a coach that in those kind of like the things that you can explain, like we just saw Cohen explain, the coach last year said you wouldn't understand it. I could tell you about it, but you wouldn't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. You're not smart enough to understand
like,
that.
my good, this is not that complicated.
By the way, the missed field goal on Cam Little, Ross Matisik's got to get his snaps better on field goals. The location of them are not good.
Yeah.
He's putting them real tight. And fortunately, Logan Cook is really good. I mean, arguably the best holder in the National Football League. And I remember when Joe DeCamillis was here, who is arguably one of the best special teams coaches in NFL history. He's also the son-in-law of Dan Reeves, married Dan Reeves' daughter, was here for a long time, I think 2 different tours of duty. And he told me, he said, he's the best holder I've ever been around. And he's been around the game a long time and watched the film on a lot of holders. And so, fortunately, Logan's been able to handle it, and it didn't impact the miss. But that's, I think, something, if that's a little bit off in the operation, I think it also maybe affects the thinking of a kicker in some situations.
Got to rush or whatever.
Do I need to delay it a second?
Yeah.
Is it going to be okay? I mean, that's something you don't want your kicker even thinking about.
Hey everybody, it's Mike Dempsey here, thanking you so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars on YouTube. But before you click away, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and be sure to check out our other team-specific channels on the 1010XL network on YouTube.